So we've completed these two houses in the last year, and we have been always asked by clients, how much does it cost? And of course, it's a phantom question, right? Because really, when you step back from this, it's not like they were going to build a conventional house. That's not why they came to us. And of course, if they say, well, how much more does this approach, this passive house approach, cost than a conventional? They really just wanted to understand, I think, what they're getting into. But really, I guess I could sort of throw this whole thing aside and say, look, it doesn't matter. Just spend your money in a way that you believe in. And if we need to build you a 2,500 square foot house instead of a 3,000 square foot house, we can make that work. So what's the house that you believe in? But anyway, we wanted to do this for ourselves and for our clients to really understand, how to think about energy and cost of ownership as well as the mortgage. We're assuming that most of our clients, which is true, most of our clients are getting a 30-year mortgage. And so when they're looking at what the cost to own a house is, it's the energy cost plus the mortgage. And they always come and say, okay, I want this kind of house and my budget is such. And we say, all right, what's your utility budget? Oh, I don't know. I said, well, that's part of the equation. So, okay. So I'm Tom Bassett-Dilley, architect in Oak Park, Illinois, which is just outside of Chicago, member of the AIA and the CPHC since 2011. And we did together the first passive house in Chicago in 2012, and just got our second one certified, and we have two more that are pre-certified and some more coming up. It's catching on. We're really eager for the multifamily to hit Chicago, and I think it's just about to. Affordable housing, there's plenty of opportunity there. That's who I am, and when I work together with Brandon, we're always looking at kind of overlapping through design and construction in the service of the client. So it's really kind of putting it together in an integrated way.
I'm Brandon Weiss with Evolutionary Home Builders. We're a FIA certified builder as well as other sustainable certifications.
So it's been a really great synergy. I think we've each learned a lot from each other. I know I've learned a lot from Brandon. And this is kind of the chronology of our houses. That's the ICF passive house we did. This is the one that was certified last year. Also, it was LEED Platinum, but we finished construction a year ago. This is in Hinsdale. That was on the tour last year. It came to Chicago. You saw that in framing. That just got pre-certified. This is about to go into certification in Geneva. And then this little house, which is actually not going for certification. That's sort of here are the ones that we're taking as case studies. Okay, so the one on the left, I'm really bad with left and right, is a slab-on-grade house. It's about 1724 ICFA, the interior conditioned floor area. The Hinsdale passive house, those full basements. We basically have bedrooms in the basement, 2 floors of living. There's 3 people living in this house and 6 in this house. We have pretty good occupant density. And that really does play into kind of the certification and the way you look at primary energy now is a per person diet. So these are our WUFI passive results. We did really well because we put a lot of insulation on. And we'll get to that in a minute. I'm just going to say a few things briefly about this. This is coming from our ArchiCAD model. We're calling the Oak Park one, the slab on grade, case 1 throughout this study, and the Hinsdale house, case 2. You see we have our frost protected shallow foundation slab on grade for this guy, and clear spanning with open web trusses, deep, or I should say basement, full basement for the Hinsdale house so we can get the living space down. And I'll let Brandon sort of talk through that.
So on the first case, case 1, we looked at this and looked at probably 3 different wall assemblies when we were first kind of in schematic design. So after working together on the first project, we were kind of able to figure some things out and easily start some pricing on some early schematic sketches even before it was put in CAD or ArchiCAD. And so we looked at what are the impacts cost-wise of having a basement versus doing a shallow frost-protected slab, and modified also the wall assembly, and try to come up with the sweet spot of where we could do to hit the client's budget and hit the client's goals and our goals for performance. So we ended up doing, like Tom said, the frost-protected shallow slab. We did a 2x8 wall that was bibs as the cavity insulation, and then 4 inches of polyiso on the outside of that. We did plywood, as was our air tightness layer, the sheathing layer. Then we got the polyiso, and we also put a house wrap on the outside of that as our main weather-resistant barrier. Let's see, and the roof was a monoslope roof, so we did 14-inch TGIs that were also had the bibs in them, and then 5 inches of polyiso on that. We first taped the seams, or actually did the Prosecco on the roof slope, covered it with 4 inches, or 5 inches of polyiso in 2 layers, and another layer of plywood, and then our shingles. So that ended up being that wall assembly. And then on case 2, again, we had an early schematic design. There's actually living space in the attic and a dormer on the roof, and we priced it out and went back to the client, and they wanted to bring the budget down a little bit. So we looked at the opportunity, if we brought the basement out of the ground a little bit more, finished those rooms down there, put the bedrooms in the basement, did a nice larger window well and connected that to the outdoors. Could we bring the cost down, and ended up finding that sweet spot early on in that process, and ended up with a 2x6 wall. We use cellulose dense packed to these walls. We netted and glue them in. This is right across the street from both the commuter rail and a freight rail, so we wanted to make sure we had some better sound acoustical dampening there. We followed that with 5 inches of EPS on the outside of the wall. The basement walls were the concrete wall, and then we had 10 inches of EPS on the outside of that. And we actually kept the inside of the concrete walls exposed because we had all the insulation on the outside. We did some board forming and used some unique pattern in the concrete to try to dress it up a little bit and make it seem more livable, which when we did the tour there a couple months ago, people really liked it and got that sense that it wasn't really a basement, it was more of a lower living room. Successful design, and worked out well for us, and the clients loved it as well. And then going up to the roof, we had 24 inches of cellulose and just a ventilated attic essentially. So we used zip handles for our ceiling lid and taped the seams, and that was our air tightness layer, which we incorporated with the walls, which is also zipped with. We used the joint and seam on the seams of that, and then also taped some of it.
The mechanicals that we have, the Zender ERV in the first project with a single mini split, and in the second one we did a serve for our ventilation with 2 mini splits. So this is just a little bit of a sidebar here. We wound up kind of punching the house full of holes a little more to get more internal air circulation using just some Panasonic Whisper Green fans to pull air down, because I sloped the ceiling up to the south to kind of create this space where we were going to have these lofts all along the south side. We only wound up putting it in the child's bedroom, which is a great little space. Put a bunk bed up there, or, guitar or whatever. So anyway, but that's the solar gain side, right? So we're open to the sun, but it also means that stratification really can happen. And they said, hey, our daughter's loft, we warned them about this, that there might be, and we talked about an internal air circulation layer. We talked about potentially putting in some phase change material, to damper these kind of heat loads. So they said, no, we'll live with it and see how it works. So anyway, we came back and retrofitted in an air circulation system. So the more we go on with these things, we're realizing because of the thermal spike you can get with solar gain and shoulder seasons, that moving more air around is good. And just doing a separate mini split with a very low flow of a ERV only system is not enough to move the air around and equalize it. So it was a big lesson learned for me, and the serve now is moving a little more air around and it's doing some conditioning, so it kind of takes that off a little bit. Air just comes back to the stairway and comes back up and rises through the middle. So it's just this big loop in the house. Okay, so let's get into the cost issues here. How are we doing time? I mean, just want to know. 20 minutes? Okay, great. Because this is really kind of where it's all about. So again, case 1 over here, case 2 over here. This is a wall detail we drew early on. I'm showing the window conditions, because really a lot of it comes down to how you're going to deal with the window. This is our 2x8 wall with the 4 inches of polyiso out there. In an early conversation with Brandon, we said, let's just put a 2x2 out there, and we can hit that with nails for our trims around the windows, etc. And we can still get really good coverage over this UPVC frame of the Zola thermal window. But we wound up doing it with a plywood butt. So when you look at this, you'll see that plywood butt there. So that was kind of our wall assembly and how it meets the penetrations. So that means that joint and seam has to come all the way around like that. This is our airtight barrier there in the plywood then, and then the WRB is out here on top of the foam on the outside on top of the polyiso. So basically you have these 2 separate control layers that are separated themselves physically. So this is, in case 2, it's similar. We have zip sheathing here on the 2x6 The lead carpenter of the project said, you know, I want stronger bucks. I don't like these 3/4 inch bucks. So we framed the 2x6 wall, and then when you just frame the bucks with 2x12s right there, that sticks out 5 1/4 beyond the sheathing. So we have 2 layers of EPS to equal 5 1/4. And then again, WRB, which in this case you can see it's the Henry Blueskin, an air barrier, which is back at the zip, and then we have a WRB, which is out in front of the installation. So while this was happening, I had another project downstate that I couldn't get Brandon into, and it was like 3.5 hours down south, and I was talking to the builder down there, and he was freaking out when I was showing these details. He goes, I can't get my guys. He was literally, his pulse was going up, and I was like, okay, come on, we're going to figure out how to do this. Now, this is a project where the owner really came wanting net zero. Okay, so we're looking at the house, and we're looking at the energy model, and we're looking at all this insulation that we had. And we have recently learned about this material InSoFast. This almost passive case is where we're looking at this single layer of InSoFast. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a EPS with little plastic ribs in it. Okay, so it looks like 1/2 of a ICF form. And the beauty of it is it's ribbed on both sides. So you can basically build a 2x6 wall and put your zip sheathing on it. It's your air control layer and your WRB in one, like in a conventional house without exterior insulation. And that works because of the grooves on the backside of the InSoFast. It can just drain there, and you flash at the bottom of it. So you flash your windows to the zip. You don't have to flash your windows out here onto the buck. You know, it kind of simplifies how that whole series of control layers go together. This is where the InSoFast goes. It's sort of grayed out. The thickest they have right now is 2.5 inches, so it's barely enough for our John Stroud rule of thumb, 1/3 to 2/3 condensation control. But we're there, so there it is. We don't have to build these funky bucks. They can use regular nailing fins like they're used to, you know. So that when I brought this to the Springfield contractor, he calmed down and said, okay, we can do this, we can do this. And okay, we're going to do this. So I went back to the Woofy Passive model and said, how much of a hit am I taking in the energy here? How many more PV panels am I going to have to put on this project to get it to net zero annually? And the answer was 0, because it made such a small movement in the energy, because we had these really efficient mini splits. And so we're looking at the energy penalty, and it's negligible. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, this is scaring me here a little bit, you know, about what is this going to tell me about my passive house energy standard. So we'll get to that. Anyway, it's a pretty good wall. But you see, we went from R50 down to R31, and that's a big hit in your annual heat demand. And in your peak load as well, a little bit. But it was simpler to build, so I'm moving forward with that. I'm just thinking in the back of my head, well, what is this going to mean on projects? You know, how much simpler and cheaper is that to build? We should try this. We should practice it, figure it out. So we said, all right, let's take these 2 passive houses we built, and let's do a dialed down sort of in between level, this pretty good level, and let's do a code build level, and let's look at the cost. And that's where Brandon stepped up and started running the numbers.
And looking at the cost, we basically looked at the wall assembly, or the overall assembly of the home, the envelope, the windows, mechanical systems, and the InSoFast option. We priced out the 2x6 wall, you know, versus the 2x8 wall. We did that instead of the bibs. The zip sheathing was our value engineering, or what we're going to price here, but the InSoFast was pretty new, so we also able to price with the crews and make sure they could estimate the hours appropriately. Same roof and slab. We did a shallow frost-protected slabs. To control condensation, we wanted to look at the same roof assembly. Same HVAC system for that option, middle case scenario, and the same windows. And that total savings came to, for case 1, was a $16,000 savings, and for case 2, $7,200 savings. You know, case 2 is a more traditional, you know, gable roof with a flat ceiling. And then we looked at code build, so this was something we've never done, but you know, looking at how we had to look up the code book and see what the codes actually were to try to see what we were going to be pricing. So we decided we were going to go with the 2x6 R21 high density batt, no exterior wall insulation. For the roof, we did the 16-inch TGIs, you know, with the bibs again, but no exterior insulation. Now, you know, this again, looking at the energy implications, we know that's not good from a building science perspective, and there's durability issues involved with that, but priced it as it was. And then case 2, we just looked at an R50 blown in cellulose, just being the code there. And case study 2, we just looked at 1-inch XPS under the slab. And then for the windows, we just looked at kind of off the shelf from Menards type window. And then mechanical system changed in the code built. We went to bringing in natural gas furnace and a 13-seat air conditioning unit, gas hot water, and exhaust only ventilation. So just a pretty good house, but cost savings there. Case 1 was $42,000, case 2 was $28,000. Without knowing, the next slide we'll get into actual dollars, but or percentages versus dollars.
Yeah, and I have to say, these numbers kind of surprised me that they were so different from case 1 and case 2, but I think what happened is in case 2, we've really figured out a system that's relatively inexpensive to build. And so we're not going to have huge savings off of that because we've kind of worked some kinks out. But case 1 was a more expensive house to build. Structurally, the non-vented roof, the shallow frost protected foundation maybe? Yeah, so anyway, I think we're getting more benefit there. So, okay, we are at a PassiveHouse conference, there have to be some graphs. This was looking at the energy, the total yearly energy for each of these houses. How much does it change when we shift our insulation, okay? And where does it shift? Okay, so the orange is the space conditioning, the blue is cooling. Miscellaneous energy, so this is our plug loads and lighting, we've lumped those together here because they don't change that much, is the yellow, okay? And the dark blue is ventilation, and in the code built case, we just threw ventilation into the miscellaneous electric because it's not a continuous thing. And so what we found is that, yes, the energy demand goes up, but not proportional to the drop in insulation. Going from R30 to R50, or R50 to R30 rather on the walls, doesn't make a similar bump in the energy. So the InSoFast approach on case 1 really only bumped us up about 13% in total energy over the course of the year. You go down to the code level, though, we're talking about 150%, so it's really a major difference. And in the next slide, we'll look at what this means in terms of dollars if you're operating this, because that's really where we want to get to. That's what an owner thinks about, not so much kilowatts and BTUs. In case 2, it's similar, okay, 8.5% increase in total energy comparison. In addition to, on top of the PassiveHouse case, code build was 152%. Now, on this one, I broke out the space conditioning. I put the heating and cooling together just to look at what that percentage difference was. So the InSoFast version was an 18% increase, and code built 323% increase. So these really huge differences when you really dial down the insulation. So it's there's some really interesting things I'm seeing when I started looking at these numbers. One thing that really surprised me is that the cooling load is the least on the code built house in our plan. So, I mean, yeah, Michael's nodding his head. It's like, yeah, you model a few of these, you realize that in the summertime, you've got all these internal loads. You got all these people and all this electricity being used, and you're holding it all inside, right? Keep the energy inside. Well, in the summertime, it's not really working for us. We still have some solar gains, no matter how well we're shaded, just from radiant. So the cooling is a little bit of there, but obviously it's not moving enough to offset a huge increase in heating.
Is that the temperature delta in your winter is huge? It's very cold in Chicago, right?
Very cold in Chicago, and it's hot and humid in the summer. Yeah.
What's the time frame for these dollar amounts?
This is for a year. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just 1 year of running the house.
$1,000 a month.
Well, okay, let's look at that. So
what did you use to model those?
we use Woofy Passive for all the energy.
For each of the
Yeah. And that was actually a question on my mind. Is when you dial all the way back to code built, is it throwing off your results a little bit? I don't know. So we put that together, yearly cost, just using a mortgage calculator online at a 4% mortgage and a 13 cent per kilowatt hour electricity cost. And we didn't include any increase in costs over this 30-year time. This is like as if energy costs were just frozen. So what we kind of intuitively thought was going on with building to the PassiveHouse level is kind of playing out here, that it's almost a wash. You can build the code and have a really cruddy house and pay the energy company more, or you can build a really good house and have a little higher mortgage, right? Now the difference in actual numbers here, on case 1, we're going from $35,572 yearly cost down to $34,794 for the InSoFast option. The pretty good option is actually the least cost of ownership of all these, and $34,952. So, but they're so darn close. And what does this middle one not have? It doesn't have a certification. You can't certify to this middle level, right? I mean, and I think that's really important. Everybody sitting here understands that. Because, you know, it's one thing to say, yeah, I think we did, but it's another thing to have it actually certified. Sorry, yeah.
And what's your base code on right now?
2015 IECC. Yeah, exactly, yeah. Illinois, for all of its political stuckness, has been adopting the IECC. The code built is a little more expensive to own and operate than the in-between version. Okay, now, on the case 2, it's interesting. PassiveHouse is the least expensive to own and operate over the course of a year. I love that. And this is a 4% delta. Okay, this house is 7% more expensive to build passive than code built.
But InSoFast is a lower number.
InSoFast is the lower number.
I'm sorry, yeah, I did that dyslexic kind of thing, yeah. By about $300 a year, beer money, right? I mean, really. Yeah, that's what I mean, it's a wash. I don't know how many people this would stun. These are people who, when we get into value engineering, and we put this screen porch with a masonry fireplace on it that they fell in love with, and they said, you know, the budget's too high, we gotta cut this out. I say, okay, I hate to ask this, but should we get rid of the screen porch and the fireplace? No, we gotta keep that. So, this is what I mean. It's like, what do you believe in? You know? Do you believe in having a healthy, well-ventilated, comfortable house that's gonna last a long time? None of the dirt. I mean, it's interesting, whenever Brandon talks about this, it's always durability and health. And the durability thing, like what you said just now, I never heard you say it, like, you're always gonna have durability issues with a code-built house. It's like, wow, yeah. You know, so anyway, there's a lot of reasons, but it's so darn close. And the code-built house is actually more expensive to own and operate. You're paying so much in energy bills. So I'm going, wow, this is really interesting. And so kind of what are some takeaways? I've already hit on some of them. Cost of ownership is nearly a wash. I think.
Mortgage is saying your energy costs may go up just like that if the rate of energy is going down.
Yeah.
But you still start pocketing your saving then versus a high energy use.
Yeah. I guess the big point for us was that a lot of people would say, okay, you're gonna ask me to spend 5, 6, 7% more on this house. How long is it gonna take me to pay that off in my energy savings? And we say, no, it's your cost of ownership. It's cash flow neutral, virtually. Yeah.
You account for maintenance or any variation in maintenance costs?
No, we talked about that, and it's a good question, really, because again, the durability question. That's another good reason to build high performance. It's going to have less maintenance costs.
I think that's the next evolution of what the numbers we'll get over time and see what that is, and figure out what the maintenance could be assumed for code build. I mean, part of the problem with the building industry as a code level is people have windows that leak in the first 8 years of their occupancy in a home, and that's acceptable to them. It's just par for the course. It's what their friends talk about.
Comfort, not and condensation control, not for energy so much. So we're close to a sweet spot for thermal envelope, just like the FIAS plus adaptation thing was all about. But the InSoFast looks a little sweeter. But again, that middle road, there's no certification to it. So, okay, so should net zero energy have a place at the table when you're in this kind of situation, and maybe your certification is going to be living building net zero or something like that? We started looking at the definitions of this, and initially I was thinking about, okay, primary energy, site energy. We know there's this factor of 3.15 according to DOE, 3.16, what we're using here in FIAS. Thinking, all right, gosh, we have that energy factor because you got to extract the fuel, you have to make the energy, there's a loss of efficiency, there's line losses as it comes to you use it. So that's why the 3.16. And so I'm making PV in my roof, and now it's going to go out, but I looked at this DOE definition, they're saying exported renewable energy is the exact same factor. I was like, well, oh yeah, right. It doesn't go back into the ground and then back to the plant and come back. It just goes into the grid. It buffers the grid. So it's just lessening the load around. Now, so we had started looking at our monitored data. The case 1, we've got an energy monitoring. We've got a year of data. It's just fantastic. The blue is the PV output. Orange is when we need our energy, just like one of those And so, you know, we're making more in the winter, in the summer than we're using, and we're making less in the winter. But I was thinking, because of this primary energy going back and forth, we were going to have to start, you know, calculating for the heating season, and the cooling season, the shoulder season. But anyway, I looked at that and went, okay, this is simple. We can just basically count what's going out the same as what's coming in. Now, I should mention, as Brian, who reviewed my paper, said, well, no, that's not how FIAS looks at it. And so FIAS, you can't just offset all your energy to get to your primary energy factor with PV. It counts, but in a diminishing return. So the more you put on, the less it counts against your primary energy. But you're still making energy in the world. So there's a sort of DOE definition and how you look at really annual net zero, and then there's certification. So they're a little bit different, but we wanted to look at what the cost would be to take these 3 different levels of houses to net zero. A lot of people like to hook onto that concept. It basically came out kind of almost the same. Interesting, what we did is we assumed 4,000 a kilowatt installed. We were figuring 345 watts per panel, which is a pretty high output, but we tend to want to use fairly high output so they can fit in array on a roof. So for case 1, we found that we needed a 6.05 kilowatt array. That took 18 panels. If we dialed it down to the InSoFast level, we were at 6.3 kilowatts, still 18 panels. You know, we're in just this little change here. For the code-built house, we need 74 panels. And so there's just no way. And so expense-wise, again, there's our sweet spot. Code-built is like another 50 grand more. But who's going to try to take a code-built house and take it to net zero? Some people might. I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. And then similar results on case 2. We had to go from 24 panels to 25 panels to get there. And by the way, these houses that we're building, they're always pre-wired for PV. We have yet to install a PV array. But what the funny thing was, I couldn't resist doing this, is like, what do those arrays look like on the roof? And so this is our bullet center, you know, for all the wrong reasons. But this is actually not, this is only 40 something, we actually need 70, so this would be like out to here. But that's real, you know, that's how many panels we'd actually need on that Hinsdale house for a family of 6, you know, to go annual net zero. So it works. As a kid, I always liked those, you know, those cool cars with those boiler fins, you know what I mean? I always draw those cool cars before I started drawing buildings. Take the energy over time into account and the life cycle costing too, yeah.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search on the maintenance cost. It's 1% per year, so a $300,000 house is $3,000. And they said you really should account for it. And over the life of that 30-year mortgage, it's 27% of your principal and interest. Wow, it's a big number.
And the thing is, you know, this is not like a production home builder versus what we're doing. This is like if we did it, you know, so we figured there would be relatively comparable design costs. There's not a huge delta for us to do PassiveHouse. You know, we do it pretty quickly, and so it's not like it's a huge time thing for the owner. Yeah.
Not completely fair because you have a top-notch building.
Right. But I'd actually charge more for the code building, so I cover my warranty costs. Yeah, it was really quality of space that I was after. You know, getting some light. And the thing is, in a mid-block house, urban house, you see, I've been sort of heading down this road of biophilic design sort of from intuitive, and what I was realizing there was that you need to have a vista, you need to have a sense of connection to something natural. And you can look out the back to your neighbor or out the front to your neighbor and your view stops. But we had this set with the stair is always an opportunity for the space to open up. And so I realized that if we lifted the space there, that you could have this great view to the sky. It's just, and the sky in the Midwest is so beautiful. It changes all the time. So, all right, we done at time?
No time.
All right, thanks.